Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 7 Part 22 based on novel. So let's start. A pair of feet wearily trudged on the dried, cracked and dusky yellow ground. A few clouds of dust rose along with his movements, and it felt as if even the dust itself did not have the slightly bit of energy. Lin Dong raised his head and stared numbly at the unending barren land around him. His originally keen and acute gaze unexpectedly turned somewhat blank at this point in time. He had already been traveling for a month. After a month, all he saw was the same unending barren land. A dark and gloomy yellow seemed to bob up and down as it continuously reflected in his pupils. It seemed that even the color of his pupils was being changed due to this endless barren land. After walking for a month, Lin Dong's skin had already turned withered and tinged with yellow. His black hair had also dried up and turned yellow. If one were to see him from far, he would look just like a terminally ill person. Lin Dong licked his dry, rough and pale lips, before stretching out his hands. His originally slender hands had turned abnormally rough. Soon after, he slowly clenched his fists. The abundant and vigorous energy they once held had already faded away. This barren land was absorbing his energy. Lin Dong could feel that as he was traveling across this domain, his energy was slowly fading bit by bit. He had previously attempted to quietly sit down in order to defend himself against this erosion. However, it was of no avail. Lin Dong knew that once his energy had completely dissipated, he would have failed the trial. As for the Great Desolation mysterious scripture, that was simply out of the question. As expected, this is not simple at all. Lin Dong murmured to himself while bitterly laughing. He looked down at a stalk of withered grass below his feet, which still had a withered flower attached to it. Bending down to pick it up, he touched it with his finger, causing the flower to transform into dust and scatter away with the wind. However, it would be too embarrassing to give up now. A somewhat ugly arc appeared from the corners of Lin Dong's mouth. After a while he spat out a mouthful of air before dragging his seemingly lead-filled feet as he continued his slow walk forward. Who? As Lin Dong continued to trudge on, at another spot in this endless barren land, stood a muscular and sturdy figure. Swaying to and fro, he finally collapsed powerlessly with a loud thud. His entire body had withered, however, no fresh blood flowed out. Specks of light emerged from within his body as his body continued to disappear. As the specks of light started to rise from between his eyes, an unwilling and deeply tired expression filled Jiang Hao's cracked face. On the surrounding ground were a few cracks. Obviously, these cracks were forcefully created by him. However, in this strange place, it was obvious that using force alone was not going to solve the problem. "I failed," Jiang Hao muttered to himself as his vision started to turn blurry. After a while, his body finally turned completely into specks of light and disappeared from this boundless barren land. Following his disappearance, the land turned even more deathly still, as a dark and gloomy atmosphere filled the area, as if the land had died. 1 month within the Great Desolate Tablet was equivalent to 1 month outside. Although 1 month had passed, the skies and forests surrounding the Great Desolate Tablet were still filled with a large crowd of people. This crowd apparently did not disperse even as time passed. On the contrary, as time continued to pass, even more senior direct disciples arrived after hearing the news. Currently, the entire spectacle was quite majestic and vast. At this moment, every pair of eyes from the surrounding mountains and forests were locked onto the 5 glowing pillars of light in front of the Great Desolate Tablet. Within the 5 pillars of light sat 5 cross-legged figures. They were as still as monks in meditation. Hovering in the sky, Chenjun, Wu Dao and the rest all had solemn expressions. During the past 1 month, they did not move as well and continued to observe the 5 as well as the Great Desolate Tablet. Buzz! A faint buzzing noise suddenly rang out within the quiet mountain range. Immediately, everyone's attention turned to focus on one of the light pillars in front of the Great Desolate Tablet. The pillar of light gradually dimmed. "Jiang Hao has failed," said Ying Xiaoxiao in a low voice, while quietly clenching her slim and tender lily-white hands after seeing this scene. Upon hearing her words, there were a slight change in Ying Huanhuan and Qing Yi's expressions. Only at this moment did they finally realize the dreadfulness of the great desolate tablet. Under the attentive gazes of countless people, the pillar of light started to rapidly weaken before completely dissipating with a cracking sound. After losing the light pillar, Jiang Hao's body fell, back facing the ground, his face as white as sheet. Sigh? Chen Zhen gave a soft sigh before waving of his sleeve. A gentle wave of energy descended down towards Jiang Hao and supported him, before some desolate hall disciples rapidly came forward to help him. They were able to endure for 1 month. That is already quite decent, said Wu Dao after remaining silent for a while. Chen Zhen laughed bitterly, before nodding his head and saying softly, "Let's wait and see." As they were talking, Chen Zhen's eyes could not help but shoot a worried look at Lin Dong's body. With his shrewd and ruthless eyesight, he could tell that Lin Dong was not in good shape. However, at this moment, there was no way for anyone to help him. Within the great desolate tablet, one could only rely on oneself. Under the anticipation of innumerable people, time continued to pass quietly. Unknowingly, another half a month had passed. During this half-month, Chen Zhen, Wu Dao, and the rest's expression had grown increasingly tense. From time to time, their actions revealed some impatience. It was obvious that their hearts were not tranquil and calm. That was because Fang Yun and Song Ju had also failed after Jiang Hao. Furthermore, most importantly, Pang Tong's light pillar, the disciple with the most experience in Desolate Hall, had started to dim. It was obvious that he was about to fail too. Within a short half a month, 4 out of the 5 senior direct disciples in Desolate Hall had already failed miserably. Crack! The pillar of light around Pang Tong's body finally dissipated completely. A disciple was already prepared as he immediately rushed over and carefully supported his body. Looking at Pang Tong's deathly pale face, feelings of dread inevitably surfaced within his heart. The great desolate tablet was truly dreadful, even the most talented Desolate Hall direct disciples had failed one after another. After Pang Tong was carried away, the originally peaceful and quiet atmosphere started to turn sad and depressive. It felt as if the air had solidified. "Only Lin Dong is left," said Ying Xiaoxiao with a soft sigh. Ying Huan gently nodded her head as she bit her red lips. Her fine and slender hands were already twisted together, causing a dark green color to appear on her originally semi-transparent jade-like skin. 2 figures were standing at a mountain peak some distance away from the great desolate tablet. Both of their gazes shot through space and looked at the area where the vast crowd were waiting. "Lin Dong doesn't seem to be in good shape," said the blue-robed old man who was standing beside Ying Xuanzi. "He might be able to endure 5 more days." Ying Xuanzi said with a soft voice before giving a helpless sigh. Were they all going to fall again this time? After 5 days, it was still the same. On the 5th day, when the scorching sun was rising towards the center of the sky, a pale white color suddenly appeared on Chen Zhen, Wu Dao, and the rest's faces, while an uproar started to rapidly spread across the vast crowd. This was because the pillar of light enveloping Lin Dong had started to dim. From their previous experience, this was clearly an omen of impending failure. Ying Huan's jade-like hand started to clench tightly, before she tightly gripped Ying Xiaoxiao's wrists and her big eyes started to turn red. Although she was extremely confident in that fellow's resilience, she knew that this setback was not something that Lin Dong could easily disregard. She could already imagine his forced smile in the near future. "Big sis." Ying Xiaoxiao looked at the young lady beside her, who could not bear to see Lin Dong fail, before she sighed and shook her head. This matter, perhaps this was how it would end. Under the regretful gazes of innumerable people, Lin Dong's pillar of light slowly started to grow dimmer. Bang! As an uproar was stirred in the outside world due to the weakening of the pillar of light. Lin Dong's body finally collapsed heavily onto the ground in the endless barren land. A painful sensation spread across his entire body. Right now, Lin Dong's skin was thoroughly cracked and he looked extremely hideous. Furthermore, the energy within his body had disappeared completely. There were even specks of light floating out of his body from time to time. Lin Dong's mouth was shaking as he fuzzily stared at a stalk of withered grass in front of him. He knew that he was already at the end of his limits and did not have the energy to continue walking forward. He stared at that stalk of withered grass for a while, before reaching out with his hand and inserting it into the withered and yellow ground. He proceeded to grab the whole withered plant including its roots. When the withered plant left the ground, Lin Dong stared at the roots that were hidden beneath the surface. Reaching his finger out to touch it, the entire plant and even its roots completely turned to dust and floated away. The dust floated and scattered in front of Lin Dong's face. His face turned gloomy with uncertainty as he stayed in this way for close to half an hour. The only thing he heard was his hoarse voice which rang across the silent domain. The desolate spirit shouldn't be like this. Lin Dong slowly raised his head and looked towards the grey and dusky sky. From its color, it was as if even the sky had died. Looking once again at this piece of land, although there were withered grass around, all of them were dead. However, desolation was not like this. After desolation, life would stay hidden, waiting for the time to bloom. After desolation, there would also be an abundance of life. However, in this land, even the sky and earth were dead. Lin Dong lowered his head and suddenly extended his hands to dig the ground in front of him, causing dried dust and sand to fly into the air. Although he had hardly any strength left, by relying on sheer willpower, he was able to brandish his palms mechanically. Pop! Another lump of dull yellow dust was clawed up from the ground by Lin Dong. The dust scattered before his eyes. Yet, in that moment, his pupils had shrunk into the size of a needle as he scanned the dust. Within the dust, he had seen a floating black dot. This black dot gave him the same feeling as the black dot on the surface of the tablet. It felt mysterious and sinister and seemed capable of swallowing all life from the heavens and earth. Without even blinking, Lin Dong's gaze followed the black dot as it fell to the ground before disappearing. Immediately following its disappearance, Lin Dong turned as still as a statue, and he did not even move a single inch. Specks of light started to scatter from within Lin Dong's body. Half of his body had already turned to light and scattered away. However, as his body was scattering, a fierce glint suddenly reappeared in his blank and dead eyes. Huff! Taking in a deep breath of air, Lin Dong lifted his head and stared at the endless stretch of land. Although there was no one here, an extremely earnest expression appeared on his face. Soon after, a youthful voice consisting of a single chain of words started to ring out. Return my strength to me. Great desolate tablet, you are sick, you must be treated. Upon the vast and seemingly endless wasteland, Lin Dong spoke in an earnest yet strange and flat voice, which slowly rang out and echoed across the area. However, when his voice faded, the area remained deathly quiet. Nothing out of the ordinary had happened. Yet, this scene did not cause Lin Dong to panic at all. His eyes were tightly fixed onto this spacious land, as if someone was here who could understand his words. As Lin Dong spoke, more and more specks of light emerged from within his body. Then his legs faded amongst the lights, followed by his waist, then his chest. The specks of light slowly spread outwards, but the sharpness within Lin Dong's pupils only grew fiercer and more powerful. You once gave Senior Ju Tong and them a chance, why not try again? Lin Dong's voice gradually became calmer as he spoke faintly while continuing to stare at this lifeless land. The specks of light slowly spread, and started to go beyond Lin Dong's neck. Those things, they cause you a lot of pain, don't they? Lin Dong glanced slightly at the spreading light. His lips formed a mocking smile as he spoke. Buzz. The wriggling lights finally froze at this moment. Seeing this turn of events, the smile on his lips gradually widened. This time, he had finally won the bet. The great desolate tablet did indeed possess an intelligent consciousness. Unknowingly, a gentle breeze blew across the barren land, causing waves to emerge. These waves came from all directions, and finally converged with Lin Dong at their center. Kai Kai? Veins of light spread as Lin Dong's disappearing body started recovering at an unimaginable speed. Furthermore, as his body was recovering, his abundant energy also returned once again. Thanks. Lin Dong clenched his fist and smiled as he felt the return of his vigorous energy. He lifted his head and clasped his hands together towards the land as he laughed. Crack crack. As Lin Dong's voice faded, cracks started to appear on the barren land. The cracks formed a twisted pattern like a distorted image, while Lin Dong stood on the now crumbling land. However, even in the face of this rapid change, there were no signs of panic on Lin Dong's face. Instead, a faint trace of delight could be found deep within his eyes. I guess this can be considered a breakthrough. The land finally completely fell apart as darkness gushed over from all directions and drowned Lin Dong's body within it. While time briefly stood still, the atmosphere in the Dao Sect mountain range had grown extremely explosive. A kind of explosiveness that could stem only from the lone figure in front of the Great Desolate Tablet. At this moment, the light pillar that had shot down from the Great Desolate Tablet and enveloped Lin Dong's body was shrinking at a slow but perceptible rate. Before this scene, unconcealable disappointment appeared on everyone's faces. If even Lin Dong failed, no other person would be able to comprehend the Great Desolation scripture of the Desolate Hall. If so, then who knew when the legendary Great Desolation scripture would ever get to see the light of day again? In the sky, a look of agony appeared on Chen Zhen and Wu Dao's faces. Although they understood that the Great Desolation scripture was not easy to comprehend, it was still rather difficult for even the likes of them to accept the scene before their eyes. Sigh. Sky Hall Master Qi Lei patted Chen Zhen and Wu Dao's shoulders as if he wanted to say something. However, he could only sigh in the end, while the other Hall Masters helplessly shook their heads. The Great Desolation scripture was truly the Dao Sect's biggest pain. With all the commotion stirring all around her, Ying Huanhuan also sighed softly. She lifted her head and looked at the exceptionally lonely and skinny young figure in front of the Great Desolate Tablet. She pursed her lips, and they turned downwards in a rather sad angle. Despite her lively personality, she could also be rather fierce. Furthermore, she had even made a bet with Lin Dong. Yet, a young girl was after all kind-hearted. She could already feel the despair and misery that Lin Dong would feel after this failure. Looks like I'll have to provoke him less from now on. The young girl's eyelashes gently blinked as she thought to herself. It ended in failure after all. On a mountain peak far away, a blue-robed old man similarly sighed and could not help but bitterly laugh as he cursed, "This damned Great Desolate Tablet. In any case, our sect has protected it for 1,000 years. It's really not giving us any face. Its origins are too astonishing. It's not our place to even try and imagine what it experienced. It's normal for it not to feel indebted to us." Ying Xuanzi smiled faintly. "Seems like it's about time to end this Great Desolation Scripture Enlightenment event," the blue-robed old man replied helplessly. However, just as his voice faded, cries of surprise suddenly rang out from the great crowd in the distance. Upon hearing their cries, Ying Xuanzi and the blue-robed old man were stunned. Immediately, they raised their slightly stunned gazes to peer into the distance as their eyes abruptly focused. Dumbfounded voices slowly escaped both their mouths. The cries spread across the land at an unimaginable speed. Ying Xiaoxiao, Ying Huanhuan, and the rest sensed the commotion and raised their eyes, focusing on the space before the Great Desolate Tablet. The originally shrinking light pillar had practically shrunk to the size of a palm on Lin Dong's head. In such a situation, many would think that enlightenment had failed and come to an end. Yet, after waiting for a few minutes, someone suddenly realized that the palm-sized light pillar had not faded. The light pillar did not completely disappear. This meant that the enlightenment was not considered over yet. "What's going on?" Ying Huanhuan said as she stared at the scene in disbelief. Ying Xiaoxiao's eyebrows knitted together. Soon after, her face gradually turned solemn, and even her voice was a little shaky as she replied, "I think this means that Lin Dong has not yet failed." Upon hearing this, Qing Yi and the rest were rather moved with emotion. Shock flickered deep within their eyes. Chen Zhen, Wu Dao, and the rest of the Hall Masters were likewise stunned by this scene. Immediately, a trace of wild joy surfaced within the Chen Zhen duo's eyes as if they were suddenly struck by a certain realization. Buzz buzz. The Great Desolate Tablet suddenly started to tremble intensely as waves of light gathered together on the surface of the enormous tablet. Eventually, they transformed into a near-solid light pillar that shot out and enveloped Lin Dong's body. Whoa! As they watched the resplendently dazzling light pillar, everyone exploded into an uproar. Shock gushed up on the faces of many. Waves of light continued to gather on the great desolate tablet. In the end, the surface of the tablet became like a mirror. One could faintly see a blurry yet gigantic figure looming within it. When the giant figure appeared on the surface of the tablet, the pupils of Chen, Wu Dao, and other hall masters instantly tightened as their breathing became hurried. Soon after, they looked at each other and saw the deep shock in each other's eyes. "Is that the tablet spirit?" Wu Dao asked with a coarse voice. "It should be. When I was a mere disciple, I saw Senior Ju Tong's Great Desolation Scripture Enlightenment, and this same figure appeared on the tablet." Qi Lei slowly replied. He suppressed his trembling heart and looked towards the Chen duo. "Congratulations, your desolate hall may just rise up again this time." Chen and Wu Dao looked at each other and laughed heartily till tears started to flow. After 100 years, their desolate hall had finally found a disciple that could comprehend the Great Desolation Scripture. Darkness was everywhere. When Lin Dong finally opened his eyes, the darkness once again withdrew like flood waters. As the darkness left, a barren and rocky land appeared before Lin Dong. Not far ahead of him, what first caught Lin Dong's attention was an ancient yellow tablet that stood about 10 feet tall. The tablet was similar to the Great Desolate Tablet. However, some ancient runes could faintly be seen on its surface. As Lin Dong's gaze slowly swept downwards, his pupils abruptly shrank. He saw veins of black, shadowy lines emerging from the bottom of the tablet. These lines looked like the feelers of a demon, ice-cold and wicked as they wiggled slowly while spreading on the tablet like some kind of virus. The undulations from these strange black lines were exactly the same as those tiny black dots. "These things are the culprit, right?" Lin Dong softly said as he stared at the tablet. "Buzz buzz." Just as Lin Dong's voice faded, faint ripples appeared on the tablet's surface, and soon after, a blurry figure emerged. It looked at Lin Dong, as a coarse voice, so ancient that it seemed to invade one's heart, rang out. "There are indeed so many things in your body that feel familiar." At the sound of those words, the corners of Lin Dong's eyes started to twitch uncontrollably. Within the quiet space, the corners of Lin Dong's eyes twitched due to the stone tablet's words. After which, he turned silent. Thoughts rapidly circulated within his mind. He did not know what the familiar object mentioned by the stone tablet was. Mysterious stone talisman? Devouring ancestral symbol? Or perhaps the ancient universe formation? Might it be all of them? The devouring ancestral symbol has also found another owner. I guess that person has fallen too. The figure on the stone tablet ignored the thoughts within Lin Dong's mind. An ancient and raspy voice slowly sounded out. Lin Dong blinked. It was likely that the person mentioned was the black-eyed old man from back then. Based on the memories obtained from that place, it seemed like the both of them were related due to the mysterious black beings. "There are some familiar martial arts on your body that is somewhat similar to that brat, the Great Desolate King," the figure on the stone tablet continued. The corners of Lin Dong's mouth twitched involuntarily. Was this person mentioning the Great Desolate Imprisoning Heavenly Hand? This martial arts was something that he had also obtained from the ancient sect. Although it was also a high-grade soul martial arts, Lin Dong seldom used it now as his other skills had grown stronger. "Elder, there seems to be something wrong." Lin Dong cupped his hands together towards the stone tablet. After which, his eyes glanced at the black lines on the tablet. The black lines appeared to be moving quietly, and it looked as if they possessed some semblance of intelligence. From the looks of it, it really appeared as though the stone tablet was attempting to suppress these things. However, they seemed to be resisting and attempting to erode the stone tablet instead. Buzz buzz. The stone tablet suddenly trembled intensely while Lin Dong was observing the strange black lines. The black lines below appeared to have been revived at this moment. Countless number of black lines rose and crazily climbed towards the stone tablet. When the black lines were climbing, waves of faint black chi scattered from them. An evil and emotionless ripple also spread apart wherever the black chi passed, while some of the black chi also rushed swiftly towards Lin Dong. Lin Dong's expression changed intensely when he saw this scene as he rapidly retreated. Although it was only a minute amount of black chi, he did not dare to let them touch him. even this powerful and mysterious stone tablet had wounded up in such a miserable state because of it. Hence, he was truly unable to imagine what would happen if he was eroded by it. Humph! This sudden and unexpected change also caused a low and cold snort to be emitted from the stone tablet. The tablet shook as numerous ancient yellow light surged downwards. An indescribable strength spread and once again violently suppressed the black lines that were attempting to erode upwards. TSK TSK. When the black lines were forced back, Lindong could seemingly hear an extremely piercing laughter. A cold and unusual evilness permeated the laughter. This laughter also caused Lindong's eyes to shrink violently. Those black lines were indeed an unknown life form. The stone tablet shot out an ancient yellow light ray that scattered the black chi that had shot towards Lindong. After which, it finally shrunk back into the stone tablet. Elder, what is that thing? Lindong could not help but ask after seeing the stone tablet turn silent again. The stone tablet appeared to ponder quietly for a moment upon hearing Lindong's question. Immediately, a light surged on the tablet and transformed into a stone mirror. Light waves surged on the mirror as a scene appeared within it. It was a vast and endless land. Lindong saw an extremely enormous stone tablet at that spot. It was surprisingly the Great Desolate Tablet. It was also possible to see quite a number of human figures standing in the sky around the Great Desolate Tablet. Although Lindong was unable to discern their appearances, it was possible to tell that these people were all top-tier experts from their auras. At this moment, a fault line seemed to have appeared in the space a great distance in front of those top experts and the stone tablet. Monstrous black chi surged. At that moment, it appeared as though the entire sky was crying. Countless ice-cold evil lights shot out explosively from the black fog. After which, those experts standing in the sky also suddenly attacked. Immediately, the entire place trembled. Although the scene on the stone mirror was only a corner of the battleground, Lindong's heart still fluttered. He was truly unable to image the scale of such a battle. Everyone there was more powerful than even their current Dao sect master, Ying Xuanzi. Nonetheless, Lindong still saw quite a number of figures falling from the sky when both sides fought. Those unknown creatures that surged out from the fault in space possessed an extremely frightening strength. Light continued to spin on the stone mirror. Finally, it focused on a scene. The Great Desolation Tablet descended from the sky. Monstrous ancient yellow light swept down and suppressed a cluster of extremely enormous black chi. The black chi wiggled and appeared to have transformed into a strange blurry figure. The sharp voice became increasingly soft under the pressure from the stone tablet. Finally, the Great Desolate Tablet suddenly landed. The land crumbled and it was directly buried under the ground. After the Great Desolate Tablet suppressed those unknown creatures, the land once again closed. It was as though it had sealed those unknown creatures underground. In the last scene, Lindong could see a human figure rushing out from the Great Desolate Tablet when the land shut itself. His aura overwhelmed the heavens. He looked at the area under the Great Desolate Tablet and sighed softly. After which, he turned around and charged towards the enormous spatial fault. The image ceased at this point. Lindong's eyes were a little absent-minded. It was a long while later before he gradually recovered from the shock. He did not know exactly what had occurred in the past. However, it was likely an extremely major event. Otherwise, there would not be so many top-tier experts gathering together to fight against an enemy. That final figure was perhaps the owner of the Great Desolate Tablet, and he used the Great Desolate Tablet to suppress and seal those powerful and unknown beings. Those things were perhaps the same black spots that now plagued the tablet. "Can I help you with anything?" Lindong scratched his head and asked. "You are right, I am indeed ill. The source of my illness is due to the thing that I am suppressing." A human figure appeared on the stone tablet as an elderly raspy voice slowly sounded. "Can't you kill it?" Lindong mused before asking. "It is only a king. If I am at my peak, I might be able to kill it. However, I am unable to do so now. Before you, there have also been others who have arrived here. However, none of them had returned." The tablet spirit slowly said. "Those are my Dao sect seniors. However, all of them are no longer around. Lin Dong spread out his hand. He immediately hesitated for a moment before speaking. There are some things within my body. If they can remove that thing, I can loan them to you. Ha ha, I sense an old friend within your body, the stone tablet laughed softly. When its voice rumbled, Lin Dong could sense that the mysterious stone talisman within his body trembled for a moment. However, it is even more seriously injured than I am. It is likely no easy task for it to awaken and recover. Lin Dong was stunned. This was the first time that he had heard of any information regarding the mysterious stone talisman. He hurriedly asked, in that case, does Elder know how to allow it to recover its spirit? That will depend on your fate. The stone tablet did not directly reply Lin Dong's question. Instead, it gave an answer that caused one to feel a headache. There is also the devouring ancestral symbol within my body. Can it help you to remove that thing? Lin Dong asked. The strength of one ancestral symbol is insufficient. If I want to kill a king, I will need the strength of 2 ancestral symbols at least, the stone tablet said. Lin Dong laughed bitterly. Just what nonsense was this? One would actually require the strength of 2 ancestral symbols in order to remove it. There were only 8 ancestral symbols in this world. In that case, is there anything that I can help you with? Lin Dong felt somewhat helpless. Those secrets that he were proud of appeared to be completely useless in front of this stone tablet. I have handed the Great Desolation scripture to those who had arrived here. The condition was that they had to bring 2 ancestral symbols in return and help me to remove it. Unfortunately, none of them returned. An elderly sigh was emitted from within the stone tablet. It is not easy to find an ancestral symbol. Lin Dong shook his head. This entire world was huge and there were only 8 ancestral symbols. Moreover, some of them even had owners, and these individuals were all extremely powerful experts. Hence, it was obviously not a wise decision to snatch their ancestral symbols. The current you cannot help me. You are able to see that I am sick, but you are unable to treat me. The raspy voice from the stone tablet caused Lin Dong to suffer a blow. He could only laugh bitterly and nod his head. However, I can also engage in a transaction with you. The condition of the deal is the same as your seniors. I will hand the Great Desolation scripture to you. In return, you will bring back 2 ancestral symbols in future to help me to remove it. Lin Dong mused for a moment and asked, how much time do I have? Less than 3 years. The erosion from that being is becoming increasingly powerful and I have difficulty suppressing it. Should that being be allowed to escape and tear open a spatial fault, the entire world will face a calamity that no one can escape from. The stone tablet slowly said. Moreover, once it escapes, the sect in the outside world will also be the first to be completely destroyed. Lin Dong's eyes shrunk. His expression gradually became grave. A moment later, he nodded heavily and spoke in a deep voice, Elder, please be rest assured that I will do my best. Ha ha, should you also fail, you will perhaps be the last person to be entrusted by me. Additionally, do not leak news about this matter to anyone, even to those elders within the sect. The being that I am suppressing is something that no single faction in this world can deal with. Should anything go wrong, the entire world will die. After all, this world no longer possesses an expert like my owner. The voice of the stone tablet became quite solemn towards the end. I know. Lin Dong breathed in deeply and slowly nodded. The human figure on the tablet also nodded. After which, the tablet shook before the ancient characters actually left the surface and whistled over. Finally, they transformed into 4 ancient yellow characters and suspended themselves in front of Lin Dong. A vast and barren aura spread apart. The Great Desolation scripture. Lin Dong's eyes stared at the 4 large ancient words in front of him. Despite his calm nature, he involuntarily trembled in excitement. This video will end here.